Hello, and thank you for joining me for a really special episode of the Finish More Music podcast. I'm with a really good buddy of mine, Mr. Brad Bizjack. Brad, thank you so much for joining me on the show, man.
I'm so grateful to be here, Keith. This is going to be an amazing episode. I'm just so privileged and honored to be able to serve your audience.
Yeah, and I mean, this is super interesting and exciting as well, because I mentioned to you previously that guests on the show typically fall into the bracket of superstar world touring DJs or music producers. We've had Grammy Award winners, Grammy Award nominated producers on here, all the way through to up and coming producers and people who are really starting to explode in the scene. And it doesn't matter who I talk to, the conversation always, every single time, comes to mindset as being a cornerstone of success. And this is the first time that I've managed to get you on the show. And you are an expert in mindset strategist, personal development. So we're kind of really getting to the root, the core of things on the show, which I'm super excited about. So I thought we could start by just getting a feel for what that means to you and what you actually do. What's your sort of role in the world of mindset and the people that you coach?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's so funny. We always look for the strategy or the how-to or the creative process or what's the actual tactical thing to do. But I have found in a decade of doing this that 80% of any success in anything, whether it's finishing more music or whether it's actually creating massive success in the music industry or anything, 80% of success is psychology and 20% is the mechanics. 20% is the how. And it's funny that this is what we're talking about because this is something that I struggle with for a very long time. So what I help people with is I help people rewire their mind for success. And really what that means is erase limiting beliefs and toxic thought patterns that they don't see are there so that they can create whatever their definition of success is. Everyone has a different definition of success. You know, a business owner wants to create more leads and sales, right? Someone in the fitness space might want to lose more weight or gain more muscle. In the music space, it might be as simple as finishing more music, or it might be actually creating tremendous financial success in the space. But either way, success is defined differently for every single person. And every single person has limiting beliefs that are preventing them from creating that. And so here's the funny thing about limiting beliefs. You believe them, right? So it almost seems like they almost seem like absolute truth, even though they're not. And so I help people really identify what those are and then rip them out so they can create the version of success that they've always wanted.
Love it. And I love the way that you put that as well. It's like their version of success, because I think it's going into the world of limiting beliefs straight away. We immediately hit up against that of I've got to be like this. I have to be like that. I must. Now, before we get into some of those, because I really want to sort of mine your knowledge as much as I can around that for creatives. What about your own journey? Because at the moment you're a super humble guy, so I'm going to shout out for you alone now. But you've built this incredibly successful business. You've got a team. You've got a beautiful family. You've managed to move to your dream home like a few years ago. You're doing is it an Ironman or something now? What are you up to?
It's a Spartan Ultra. So it's a 31-mile, 60 obstacle race that will take 12 hours. I actually just did a 22-mile training run yesterday for it. It's crazy.
Right, so you're in killer shape. I think that's all we need to know. And rather you than me, buddy. I got to tell you, I don't fancy that at all. But maybe I'll come along and have a beer on the sideline and cheer you on or something like that. But I mean, you have just absolutely smashed it. Has it always been like that? If it hasn't been like that, what was the turning point for you? What was the change? Because I know it's your definition of success, but also there's what we would call a conventional measure of success as well. And you've got all the ticks in those boxes, which is, it's absolutely inspiring. What was your journey to get to where you are now?
Yeah, it's a great question. My hope is as I share this story, it inspires you listening wherever you are, that success absolutely is possible for you. I mean, for the first 7 years of my adult life, I was struggling paycheck to paycheck. I never made even $40,000 a year, just struggling $92,000 in debt. And I had a lot of limiting beliefs and fears and doubts about I'm not enough. Things like imposter syndrome, low confidence. I had money scarcity. Things like there's always too much month at the end of the money. And if you don't have a lot of money, you can't be happy. And once you make it, it will disappear, and all this inner conflict. And at that stage of my life, what I really wanted was to be debt free. I wanted to create financial freedom. That was my definition of success at the time. And if I'm being totally honest, though, what I really wanted was to be the breaking point of mediocrity in my family history. I wanted to outrun my past. I wanted to feel like I had something to sprint towards instead of feeling like I was always running away from something. And so my vehicle, my creative outlet, everyone has a different one. Mine was online business. That was my creative outlet. And I was so excited about the potential. I was so excited about what it might do for my life and how it could serve people. But everything I tried didn't work. It was like I would start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. I was consistently inconsistent. And it was really frustrating. And I would see all these other people that I would say were not as talented in some areas, having way more success than I was. And I would start to get in my head, am I just not destined to succeed? Is it not possible for me? What am I doing wrong? And other people's success meant in my mind, it was my failure. And I would use positivity as a coping mechanism for my own insecurity. And I would just get in these depressed states on the couch where I remember seeing my laptop staring at me, begging me to change my life. And I just didn't care, even though I cared so much. And I would get depressed, and I would watch Friends reruns, binge eating nachos, downing a bottle of wine at 2 p.m., feeling sorry for myself. And I would then get pissed off at myself for being depressed. And it was this vicious cycle. And I remember my coach at the time told me, dude, you need a mindset coach, because what you're doing right now, it's not working. There's no way this is going to work. And I'm like, but Jesse, I'm $92,000 in debt. I can't afford a coach. And she said, Brad, nothing changes, nothing changes. And so I remember I maxed out my very last credit card. I hired a coach that I couldn't afford. And on our very first call, she said something that changed my life forever. I was telling her how I want this so bad. I want to be able to create this success. Why isn't it happening? I'm reading the books. I'm listening to the podcast. What's going on? And she said, Brad, you're so attached to success that you're missing the whole point. You're under the impression that you shouldn't be where you are right now. She said, more money isn't going to make you happy. It's rewiring your mind to realize that your life right now, as it is a total gift. Rewiring your mind for appreciation, rewiring your mind for happiness, for fulfillment, for success. That's what's going to lead to it. And at that time, I was resenting everything. And so what I was doing wasn't working. And so I figured, okay, I'm all in on this. That conversation changed the way that I viewed mindset. And I went all in. And I remember buying a ticket to a mindset conference because I was like, I got to figure this out, right? I got to figure out how to change my beliefs. But the universe is funny, because in the month leading up to that event, I already had the plane ticket, already had the hotel, already had everything booked. But in the month leading up to that event, I got fired from my job. $92,000 in debt. Now my income's gone, no savings. Dig that knife in a little bit deeper. And so I luckily landed in San Diego, and I was like, okay, well, I have the tickets, I'll go. And I go to the grocery store to buy peanut butter and jelly because I couldn't afford eating out at the time. And I went back to my hotel room and checked my bank balance like I did 100 times a day at that point. And I had overdrafted my bank account across the country on peanut butter and jelly. And I walked into that conference, tail between my legs. And the topic that day was rewiring your mind. It was all about how to change these toxic thought patterns and limiting beliefs. And from there, it's created massive success. We've impacted 50,000 plus people all over the world. And now we have a little girl at home and never going to have to miss a memory with her. I realized that rewiring your mind is the greatest key to unlocking your potential and living with the success and fulfillment you want. And so that's just a little bit of a backstory, but it's changed everything for me when you really go internal and focus on the limiting beliefs getting in the way.
Yeah. Wow. My gosh, what a story. I love it. It really brought something to my mind, particularly on this idea of rewiring your mind. And at that moment in time, I think that one of the areas I notice with a lot of my clients and people that I work with that they brush up against is they almost get caught in this bind where, in your story, for example, you're in this position, you've tried everything, and you're looking backwards and saying, well, I've spent 10 years on this. I've spent 20 years on this. So it could be, okay, I've spent 10 years on trying to finish music. I haven't been able to finish anything up until this point. And now I'm at a certain age, potentially that starts to come in, particularly because we might have thought into the future. Okay, by the time I'm 30 or 40 or even 50, I'm going to be at this place. Then you get to that point and say, well, I'm not there, and then get caught in this almost this sort of attacking yourself from both sides. It's like, well, I've only got this long left and I haven't managed to do anything in this period of time. And that is now telling me that that's going to predict my future, that I've got no chance whatsoever. And it's sort of this, you get sandwiched between these thoughts. I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit, just this idea of like, I don't have enough time, I'm running out of time, those kind of talking about toxic thought patterns that then go to shape someone's reality, right? Because the more you say you don't have time and then you don't take the action, the less time you get, and life starts creeping along, and you just start basically making these thought patterns your reality. Can you speak to that? Because I'm dead keen to hear your thoughts on this.
Absolutely, sir. Jot this down, listening friends. The past becomes the future when you live there. The past becomes the future when you live there. Most people set their ambitions at a level that is not inspiring to them because they're afraid of previous failures happening again. In fact, your goals and dreams of what you want to create are not scary. You're actually just scared of repeating the past. And so we get into this cycle. And speaking from a theoretical perspective, before we go into actual time, like from a theoretical perspective, if we think about a limiting belief or a toxic thought patterns, I don't have time, for example. Well, think about what that does to the potential you tap into. It lowers your potential drastically. There is no creativity. There's no energy. There's nothing. You're at a stalemate. And then from that low potential, the inspired action that you take is very, very low. And so you don't really get out of that, right? You don't blast through it. And then from low inspired action, you get really poor results. And when you get really poor results, what does that do to the belief that you don't have time? It reinforces it. It makes it stronger, has more of a hold on you. And this is what most people do in all areas of their life. Beliefs reinforce themselves because you will put yourself around people and environments that prove that limiting story true. And so if we think about from a logical perspective, I don't have enough time, or I've spent all these years doing that. Let's just take a look at that from a big picture perspective for a second. You have way more time than you might be thinking. I'm not talking about just on a day-to-day basis. We can get into productivity if we want to, but from a life perspective, if you think about the most happy, fulfilled, driven people in the world, they're ticking until they're in their 80s and 90s. They're going after it because they're so lit up by what they do and how they serve and what they create, right? And so if we think about the productive years of a human being, right? Let's say that a human being is productive, able to be productive until, let's say, the age of, let's be conservative, let's say 75. And a human being really starts being productive around the age of 25. Now, there are outliers to that, right? There's people that are productive much younger, the people that live much older. But the whole point is there's about 50 productive years. And what's interesting is that right around 35, 40 years old, people start saying, oh my gosh, well, I've spent the last 10 years and I haven't actually done anything with this. I'm so behind. I'm running out of time. Oh my goodness. And if we take a look at that from a math perspective, you've only used 15 of your 50 productive years at that stage, which means you aren't even halfway there. You're not even halfway. You're like the prime of your life. You haven't even gotten to the peak yet. Not even close. You're still at the very beginning of the hill. And so most people get so in their head because they live between the land of where they are and where they thought they should be, which, by the way, is what unhappiness is. Unhappiness is when your life conditions don't match how you think it should be. And so you start to get in your head. You start to blame events, other people, yourself. And then you start to say, well, if this would just change, I'd be happy. But no, it's if you reframe your existing expectations, that's where life starts to change, because expectation is the root of all suffering. Suffering is found in expectation that it should be different. And so if you trade your expectations for appreciations, your whole life changes in a single moment. Let me repeat that for those in the back. When you trade your expectations for appreciations, your whole life changes in a single moment. So if you're saying, I should be finishing more music, I should be more creative, I should be further along, and you're shooting all over yourself, then what ends up happening is you're living in expectation, and that's causing your suffering. But instead, you can ask, well, how have I grown? What am I learning? How can I use this to benefit my life? And you can appreciate your existing circumstances, which, by the way, is one of the greatest keys to creating your definition of success. When you can honor your existing circumstances as exactly what they should be to lead you to the life that you want, that's when you start having changes, because life's lessons will get louder and louder and louder until you pay attention. And so it'll start with this little feather dusting, and it'll say, I call this feathers, bricks, and trucks. Life likes to dust you with a little feather and say, hey, you should probably pay attention to this. You should probably learn this thing, whatever it is. And we're like, no, I'm too busy. I have too much going on. Right? And we dust off the feather. And then life's like, hey, I'm trying to get your attention. So what life does is it likes to write you a lovely note, and it writes that note on a piece of paper and wraps it around a brick and throws it through your living room window, and glass shatters everywhere. And you're so upset that the glass shattered, but you're not seeing the lesson sitting right there in your living room. That you're paying attention to what's wrong, what should be different. And you look around at all the other people in your neighborhood, they still have their windows intact. And you say, you don't understand my situation. It's easier for them. My situation's different. Someone's throwing bricks through my window, but there's a lesson right there in your living room. And if we don't pay attention, life, rigged in your favor, wants to get your attention. So what life will do is it will take a can of red paint and it will write the lesson on the front of a semi truck, and it will make its horns go really loud. So you turn and look, and it runs you over, and you see the lesson right before you get hit. And you wake up in a hospital bed a couple weeks later, and you can either pay attention to the lesson that life's giving you, or you can say that shouldn't have happened. And this happens over and over and over again in people's lives. They start blaming things like their age, like what failures they've had in the past. And it's not fair to them, because here's the challenge. And please hear me now. Your greatest challenge is thinking you shouldn't have challenges. Your greatest challenge is thinking you shouldn't have challenges, because challenges are gifts in life that are wrapped in pain so that you actually pay attention. If it wasn't wrapped in pain, you wouldn't pay attention. And so life is always giving you a gift. And when you view it that way, then all of a sudden you can start to move forward towards the life that you really want. It has nothing to do with the time you have or don't have. Colonel Sanders was 82 years old when he started KFC, right? 82. You have plenty of time. The past becomes the future when you live there. Be compelled by an inspiring vision of the future instead of looking at the problems of the past, and you'll have way more productive output way more quickly.
Love it. Wow, lots to unpack there. A few things to add to that as well. It reminds me of a story that happened to me, and I had a limiting belief, and I was like, this was when I was turning 40, and I was like, I'm not gonna, right, I'm 39 years old, and I'm like, next year I turn 40. I'm not going to be like one of these midlife crisis people like 40. Oh no, it's like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be in the best shape. I'm going to be serving the most people. Everything's going to be amazing. And sure enough, 40th birthday, I ticked all of those boxes. And then I was like, right, the next 10 years of my life are going to be the best years ever. And I didn't realize, going back to this idea that you've got the limiting beliefs, you can't even see that they're there. I had set a cap of 50's it. Not 75, not 80, not 90, like Clint Eastwood. I mean, the guy's in his 90s, right? I had put this invisible cap in. And a few weeks later, we went on this amazing cruise. And there was a guy on the cruise ship, and he had so much energy. He was like the socialite of the ship. He was involved in every activity. And he was ripped, Brad. I mean, he was in incredible shape, tan, strong guy. And I thought, this guy's like in his 50s somewhere. And it turned out I bumped into him in the gym, started having a chat with him, and I got telling him this stuff. And he said, oh, I've just had a birthday. And I said, oh, what, on the cruise ship? Yeah. He said, I've just turned 70. And I'd have never have pegged it. And he said, how old did you say you are? I said, I'm 40. He said, you're a baby. Your life has just begun. Boom, limiting belief gone. The whole kind of path is in front of you, right? And that, for me, that was a feather. I didn't need the truck on that one, but I've been hit by plenty of trucks as well. One of the things that you talked to there that I'd love to expand on a little bit more, because I know that this hits creatives really hard. And I'm going to use I think it's Roosevelt, who said comparison is the thief of joy. But to dive a little bit more into that, and that you use this really good term as well, where you were talking about seeing other people's successes as your failure as well. And I think it's just a trap more than ever now for everyone in every aspect of their life, not just creatives, but we've all got these mobile phones. They're all absolutely loaded up with people showing their best lives, their perfect lives on Instagram. And it's real easy to get, again, caught into the you don't understand, but I'm different. I can't have what they're having. They've got this, and then get down instead of being inspired by what you're seeing other people achieve. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I know that is something that hits people like really, really hard.
Oh yeah, that's that one's near and dear to my heart, because I remember always looking at these people that had tremendous success and being like, what about me? Like, they're succeeding, I'm not. What am I missing? And so I'm going to share a little bit of context with the hopes to educate and then come back around to comparison. So there's a reason I'm going this direction. Most people are driven by two things that just destroy their quality of life. And these two things it's paradoxical, because these two things are also needs that we have. But when these needs are prioritized at the top of your list, nothing will ever feel like enough, and you will compare to everyone else. And so whenever someone's dealing with comparison, I look at what's driving that. And so the two needs that drive most people that hurts their lives are certainty and significance. Those two needs will kill someone's productive output. They'll kill someone's potential. When you take a look at things like love or contribution or personal growth, when someone is valuing those things, love or contribution or growth, comparison doesn't exist. It's just inspiration. But when someone's valuing something like certainty or something like significance at the top, which, by the way, 99% of people are driven by certainty and significance. And there's not a bad thing to need those things. We all need those things. But when they're prioritized at the top of your list of what matters, then you can't sustain happiness. And so then you'll start comparing. So certainty is a survival need. It's saying, I want to make sure I'm going to be okay. Significance is the need of the ego. It's saying, how do I stack up? Am I important? Right? And when you value certainty very highly, you will close the world in around you to feel a sense of control. And even if something is painful in your life, if you know it, it's certain. And so the human mind is a survival mechanism. Its job isn't to make you happy and fulfilled. Its job is to make sure you stay alive. And so at any moment in time, it's looking for threats. So the human brain would rather be certain and in pain, because it knows how to handle it, than uncertain and growing. And so when you value certainty and you've looked at all these other people out there that have succeeded beyond standard norms, and you're going, that's not fair. They are doing better than I am. They have different circumstances, whatever it is. Then you're proving a limiting story true, a limiting belief true. It's that same confirmation bias playing out over and over and over again. And the challenge thing about beliefs is that you believe them. So it's a certain story in your life. You've played that story before, so you know how to handle the discomfort of comparison. Even though you don't like it, you know how to handle it. And so you'll play the story again and again and again. And then there's also significance. And significance is even more impactful here. Significance, when that drives your life, meaning the need to feel important and like you matter, most people meet that need by having significant problems, right? That's how people meet the need for significance, not contributing to someone else or, going and loving on their kids or whatever it is. Instead, they meet it by having significant problems. Well, when you value significance towards the top of your list, you will always compare to everyone else to see how you stack up. It becomes a question of your own self-worth. Your worth is being evaluated based on how you stack up to your environment around you. And if you are evaluating your worth, then you're aligned to yourself. There is no measure of worth. You've been worthy since the moment you were born. You have a heart that beats 100,000 times a day. You don't need to achieve in order to be worthy at all. And we might know this from a conceptual perspective, but when we have limiting beliefs and toxic thought patterns going on behind the scenes that prevent us from breaking that belief, we might logically know that it's not true, but internally we feel different. And so when it comes to comparison, being the thief of joy, we're looking at someone else and saying, it's not fair. They have it easier, or, they're doing things. What am I missing? And you're meeting your needs for certainty and significance. But if you choose instead to prioritize something like personal growth, or contribution or love, right? And that becomes something that you intend on doing more and more and more, then think about how you perceive someone doing better than you. If your intent, I call this your spiritual intent, is personal growth, and you see someone succeeding, what does that do to the narrative in your head? It changes to, how can I do that? It changes to, wow, that's amazing. What could I learn from that person? Right? When it's love, you celebrate the person. You want the best for them. Those stories of incapability don't exist in your mind anymore because your internal drivers have changed. And so whenever someone is comparing, I look for what is the belief system or need going on behind the scenes that's causing that behavior. So yes, comparison is the thief of joy, but here's what most people do. Most people will compare to other people, and then they'll say things like, I know I shouldn't compare, right? Which is basically just saying I'm comparing and I'm not listening to my own advice. That's what that means, right? I know I shouldn't compare is saying that you don't actually know, you're not doing it, right? So we need to change our intent going on behind the scenes. And this means navigating these feelings of uncertainty, seeing someone more successful than you. They're more successful. That might trigger an ego response. You might feel uncertain in the moment, but to the degree in which you can handle uncertainty is the degree in which you'll be successful, right? So it all comes down to what's driving the human being. If the person is driven by certainty and significance, anyone else doing better or worse, they will compare and see how they stack up. But when you're driven by love, contribution, growth, then all of a sudden, it becomes so much easier to be inspired by that person and want to achieve like them. Does that make sense?
Totally. So it's really a case of what's inside of you.
Yes.
Versus some sort of extrinsic motivation, which is always going to be uncertain anyway. Anything that's outside of us is going to be uncertain. And if we were to put our worth on, my worth, let's say, is based on how much money I've got. If something happens to my money, all of a sudden I'm saying I'm worth less.
Yeah. Funny how that works, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. As opposed to, like, I have the love, the contribution, the passion, the desire for growth, and all of those things inside of me, and I am valuable as I am, and that there's a certainty in that you can then take into the uncertain world, which enables you to be better equipped to deal with uncertainty, which is a necessity for growth.
Nailed it. Spot on.
Yeah, gotcha. What other things do you find as being a sort of big kind of toxic thought patterns that come up a lot that you encounter with people that you help? Because although I know that we're really focusing through the lens of creativity, but I'm a huge believer on this idea that how you do anything is how you do everything. Mm-hmm. To me, that's all pervasive, and creativity isn't something that lives in a bubble anyway. It's the totality of who we are. And if we're not doing well financially, we've got worries over there, or we've got relationship worries, or we've got health worries, then creativity is going to go out the window. And simultaneously, for people who, and we've talked about a lot of the kind of limiting beliefs and things that hold people back from being creative, that's a huge rock in the rucksack as well. And people end up having, massive fights with their significant others just because they're so irritated that their calling in life, the thing that feeds their soul, creativity, isn't being met. So it's sort of holistic. It's all areas of life. So with that hat on, what are some of the other sort of toxic thought patterns that come up that you feel it's worth bringing into people's awareness, and any tips on how to overcome those?
Yes, I specifically want to talk about what to do when you get into these creative blocks, because, and really the toxic thought patterns would be the limiting stories that play when no one else is around, right? Like, what are the words, and everyone has different ones. What are the things you say to yourself when you're in those lower energy places? What are the words that you're saying when you're unable to get moved past a creative block? And what if I were to tell you that any of those stories you were telling yourself were choices? They were optional. And it feels in the moment like it's not. But from the guy that was binge eating nachos, downing a bottle of wine at 2 p.m., I'm telling you that creative blocks are actually optional. And this might ruffle some feathers. This might make you want to punch me in the face. But I want to share a little bit about why this is. Most people, when they're in some sort of block in any capacity, and it could be in music, it could be in any part of life, it could be in marriage, it could be anything, they seek instantly the how. How do I get through this? Which is a massive mistake. And again, people probably want to punch me for saying that. But when you seek the how first, what automatically comes up is doubt, right? It automatically comes up, I'm not going to be able to fix this. Or it's like this death grip on, I'll be happy once things are different. And it makes you so stressed out. And so even if you have the how, right, you have, like, let's say you have Keith's program and it shows you how to literally finish more music. And you have the how right in front of you, but you're not applying it, or you're only halfway applying it. The reason is because you're starting with the how. And there's what I've discovered is there's 3 ways to break through anything, any block you have. 3, I learned these from my mentor, Tony Robbins, years ago. He calls them 3 keys to a breakthrough. And this changed the way that I look at the word stuck. I realized that stuck is a state. It is not a reality. It is a state. It's not, meaning it's not a pervasive reality that keeps on happening. It's a state in the moment. And so when you crave the how and you're looking for the strategy of what to change, all it does is reinforce limiting beliefs that exist in your mind, especially when you don't apply the how. Why? Because if your energy is not high, then you won't apply anything. And so high performers know this, that there's 3 keys to breaking through anything. The third most important is the strategy, right? You need the right strategy, right? That's very important. You can't head east looking for a sunset. You'll be very disappointed if you head east looking for a sunset. It doesn't work that way, right? The right strategy can save you years. It can take decades and turn it into days. But if you start there, you get in your head and you start to share limiting stories, which is actually the second most important key to breaking through anything, which is the story playing in your mind, otherwise known as thought patterns, beliefs, the story playing in your mind. Well, when you start with the how, it also makes you focus on what you have not done yet. And think about what stories stem from that, what beliefs, what fears, what doubts, what overwhelm stems from that. It makes very limiting stories play in your mind. And then what's the byproduct? Your energy is incredibly low. Your state is incredibly low. High performers flip this. High performers start with energy. So before filming this podcast, I was doing burpees, right? I was literally doing burpees in front of my computer before I logged on to Zoom to record this, because I know that my energy determines everything. The state in which you show up to something with determines what stories are playing behind the scenes in your mind. And the stories you have behind the scenes in your mind dictate if you find or apply the strategy. So if you're in a state, that's the first most important key to a breakthrough, a state of, let's say, depression. There's a recipe for that, right? Your shoulders are rounded, your breathing is shallow, you're feeling exhausted. And what stories stem from that? It'll never change. It's harder for me. And so even if you have the strategy right in front of you, you won't apply it. But if your state is energetic, alive, excited, passionate, which, by the way, I'll teach you how to do in just a moment, when your state is that way, you automatically play different stories in your mind. You automatically play things like, of course I can. I'll figure this out. And then what happens to the strategy? You apply the creative process that will actually create change because you're from a higher energy place. And so how do you actually get this to stick? Well, there's 3 things that determine your state in any moment. So evaluate when you're in a lower creative process, when you're not actually producing anything and you feel like it's this hamster wheel. Notice what you are doing and actually evaluate, because self-honesty is freedom. Evaluate what you're doing with these 3 things I'm about to share when you're not creative. Number 1 is your language. What words are you using? This is called transformational vocabulary. The words you use to describe your experience literally become your experience. Example, if I say, I'm so overwhelmed, that has a different emotional response than I'm a wee bit perturbed, right? It has a little bit of an emotional change when you use different words. For example, if I say the word gluteus maximus versus ass, it's a very different word. Sorry, no swearing is allowed, Keith, but it's a very different word.
You go for your life. You're the
right,
tip
brother.
of the iceberg compared to a lot of our guests. You're very well behaved, Brad.
I've been PG-13. I'll go a little bit more. But like it has a different emotional charge. If you say ass, it has a different connotation than gluteus maximus. One's anatomical, one is maybe thinking about someone or something on someone, right? And it brings up different emotions. So the words you use when you're not creative, what are those words? How are you describing your experience? And notice how that reinforces itself. The second thing that changes your states is your focus. What are you focused on? Are you focused on how you haven't been creative, or are you focused on the excitement to create? This is an emotional recipe. There's 3 patterns that everyone focuses on all day, every day. And how you answer what I'm about to ask you will determine what your energy is. I can predict your emotions. Pattern number 1, am I focused on what's missing from my life or what I appreciate in my life? Where do you tend to live? Everyone does both, but where do you tend to live? Pattern number 2, do I focus more on what I can control or can't control? Where do you tend to live? Everyone does both, but where do you tend to live? And pattern number 3, do I focus more on the past, the present, or the future? And we all do all 3, but where do you tend to live? But it's a recipe, because your focus determines your state. Because if you're focused on what's missing from your life, what you can't control in the past, that's called depression. If you're focused on what's missing from your life, what you can't control in the future, that's called anxiety. If you're focused on what's missing from your life, what you can't control in the present, that's called anger or frustration. But on the flip side, if you're focused on what you appreciate, what you can control in the past, that's nostalgia. If you focus on what you appreciate, what you can control in the future, that's excitement. And if you sub that for presence, it's joy, right? That's the beauty of your focus. You get to choose where to put your focus. And wherever focus goes, energy flows. So if you're focused on how you haven't been creative and you're living in the past, that's where all your energy goes. And that's why you create less progress. There's a piece of your brain called the reticular activating system. And its job is to fizzle out all the things that you're not looking for. So if you've ever been in the market for a car, you have seen this in real time. The minute you decide what type of car you want to buy, you see it everywhere. Every stoplight, every street corner, everywhere. And the same thing happens. That's because your brain is saying this is important. Well, if you're focusing on what's missing from your life, what you can't control in the past, you are telling your brain that depression is important, that sadness is important. And so you'll find more things to be depressed about, to be sad about, to be overwhelmed about. And then you end up perpetuating that cycle. And the third most important key to changing your state, by far and above the most impactful, is your physiology. If you are in a low creative place and you just get up and move your body, it's a different biochemistry. This is why I do burpees before calls, because it literally changes my energy. And then I just say stuff. I'm like, I got to write that down. That was good. And so when you change your physiology, it literally releases different biochemicals, and that changes how you feel. And so when you change your physiology, your focus, or your language, that alters your state. When you alter your state, that changes your story. And when you change your story, then you can finally apply the how to change your creative process to allow you to have more results. But don't start with the how. So when you're getting into comparison, when you're getting into these lower places, this is how you alter that instantly so you have a different result.
Love it. Worth the price of admission alone. So good, Brad. Like, and I was resonating with so much of it, you know, things like box breathing, or even like for music producers, listening to a piece of music before you sit down to create and moving your body to it, dancing to it, or whatever it is. You know, if you're your significant others watching and you just want to tap your feet, but just get some movement going on, box breathing, all of those things. And I love it. You are approaching this from a completely different direction to what most of us would ever imagine and think to do, which is brilliant. That was gold. That was incredible. Thank you. So I know our time's running out. I got two things to cover. One of them, which is the question I ask everyone, the time machine question, Brad. You're getting to get in the time machine, in the DeLorean. You get to go back to the younger version of you, and you've got one piece of advice and one piece only to tell the young Brad. What would it be?
It's a great question. I would say you have nothing to prove. You have nothing to prove. You have been worthy your whole life. No amount of success will ever make you feel any different. No amount of achievement will ever make you matter more. You have mattered your whole life. And even though you didn't hear those things for years growing up, it is the absolute truth. You have been worthy since the moment you were born. And I would say that with so much conviction that it spoke to the soul of who I was, because that's what I was challenged with for so long. I just questioned my worth and doubted myself and lived in those depressed states. And so, yeah, I would tell myself you have nothing to prove.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. But, and there's a whole thing there, isn't there, around there's a meditative phrase, which is what's there when there are no problems to solve. When the mind is really agitated and and we're struggling to live with it, which happens, and obviously you've just given a brilliant recipe for how to get out of that. There is that great question, and what's there when there's nothing to prove, nothing to solve, whatever it might be, is a good way to calm the mind down, and then look at this recipe that you've just given and just get stuck into it and make those changes, like be responsible for what you can be responsible for. Love it. Absolutely brilliant. So we're at the end of things. I want to just get a bit more info from you, though, because I know you've got a new venture coming up, which people can get involved in, which is a free training experience. And I've deliberately used the word experience because I know, having worked with you before, I know, having been through your training before, that it's not a passive just sit there and watch a couple of videos. It's actually getting involved. Yeah, like I said, laughing away, but it is a full experience of, hey, you're gonna come in this way and you're gonna go out a very different way. So how can people get involved, and what is it all about, the challenge that you've got coming up, so that people can absorb more knowledge from you? And listening to you now, and it's so inspiring just hearing you speaking and giving this recipe. If people wanted more of an experience to put this into practice and see real world differences for themselves, tell us all about it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I am obsessed with taking theoretical concepts and making them tactical, right? That's why in the most recent example I just shared with you, we go, okay, start with state, then story, then, right? It's it makes it tactical. And whatever your definition of success is, whether you want to make it big in the music industry, whether you want to simply finish a piece of music, whatever your ambition is, I'm here to tell you it's amazing. I'm not here to tell you what your ambition should be. Only your heart can do that. But whatever your ambition is, the minute you set an ambition that moves you, that challenges you, that causes you to change and grow and expand, all of a sudden limiting beliefs and toxic thought patterns and doubts and fears and overwhelms and all that stuff, comparison, will start to come up, and it will start to get in your way. And then what will slowly happen over time is you might have this dream, whatever it might be for you, and you'll start to tone that dream back because it's quote unquote unrealistic, not possible, because you're basing the future on the failures of the past, which isn't fair to your heart. It's not fair to what you're meant to create. And so what we do it's totally free. It's a 5-day challenge that helps you not only identify what it is you're after, your unique definition of success that will bring you so much joy, fulfillment, etc. What is that? And then what are all of the limiting beliefs, fears, and toxic thought patterns preventing you from getting there? And we're literally going to rip them out and replace them with empowering beliefs and thought patterns that will naturally cause you to move. So in the past, it might have felt like I want to go and sprint in this direction, but it feels like I have chains around my ankles. What we're going to do in this free 5-day challenge is we're going to remove those chains so there's no more inner conflict. So you can actually move towards what you want faster than ever before. In these 5 days, we've done this with 50,000 people all over the world. We have seen people change the course of their entire life in 5 days. Completely rewire their mind for success in 5 days. It is one of the most life-transforming programs we offer. It's totally free, and you'll discover how these people you look up to achieve their goals so much faster than everyone else without this big stress and tension. How do you do it with a smile on your face? How do you do it from a very fulfilled place so that you can either finish more music or so you can actually create a wildly successful music career, or somewhere in the middle, whatever it is that your desires are. So if you know you're meant for more than what you're getting out of life right now, and not just with music, with any part of your life, it could be marriage, it could be business, it could be finances, anything. And you know you're meant for more, but you know that there's something going on upstairs that you don't quite understand what it is in your head, and you want to rip that out so there's no more conflict getting in the way. Join the Success Accelerator. It's totally free. It starts this coming Monday on the 23rd. Make sure you register. Keith's got the link for you to get enrolled. I'm sure it'll be linked up here somewhere. But it will transform the quality of your life in such a deep, profound way in just 5 days.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure the link's in the show notes, and we'll ping out an email for everyone as well who's on the list for getting the podcast. I did it last year. I'm doing it again, and I absolutely loved it. I think it is phenomenal. You know, I've have the benefit of been working with you in the past, and it's been life changing. So I'm always all in on it, and excited to share that with people and see you on it. And it's, if you haven't already guessed as well, it's high energy. Like Brad brings it all of the time. It's like, it gets you in that positive state to learn and to absorb and to make real world changes in your life, which is absolutely fantastic. So Brad, absolute legend. I do hope you're going to come back, because I could talk to you for hours. It's the tip of the iceberg that we've covered here with the things that you can share. So like, huge gratitude to you, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you, buddy.
Thanks so much for having me, man. So grateful to be here, and just thank you for your trust and allowing me to serve your audience today.
Absolute legend. Speak to you soon, man.